Guys, welcome back to Quick Notes with Chris. Today we're going to be talking about the book Leaders Eat Last by Sinek. It's an awesome book, especially if you are in one of those leadership positions, whether it's leading the relationships that you have around you, whether it's in business, you're a manager maybe, or maybe even you do run your own business. It's a really interesting book. I highly suggest you look at it because it sort of transcends the idea of what it means to be a leader. Some things that you can actively do and change in your day-to-day life in order to basically get yourself in a more successful position. The first thing that it talks about is a story between one lion and four oxes. You see, the lion always was trying to obviously kill these oxes, but every single time any of them was about to be attacked, they'd band together, put all of their behinds touching, making sure that their horns would always be facing outwards, meaning that there was no direction that the lion would ever be able to attack them. The story then goes on to say how eventually the lion ended up understanding that strung together that he was never going to be able to defeat them, so he picked them off one by one. The analogy in the story is that you'll always be able to achieve more and you'll be stronger together as a team versus ever if you're by yourself. So sticking together, especially understanding what you're trying to accomplish, increases the chances drastically. The next thing that the book talks about is basically the difference between managers and leaders and understanding which one you want to be in order to get effective results. See, a manager just manages people's time, where a leader is there to inspire others around them, create a level of loyalty, trust and respect amongst the group, and basically a well-oiled machine working towards a goal. Versus, how many times have you worked in a job where there's a manager there that you just don't like? Well, the reality of the situation is that that person probably is just managing your time, your tasks, versus inspiring you to do the job that you're there to do. It gives a lot of examples about successful companies, specifically Costco, where they basically survived and thrived in a financial crisis of 2008. And the main reason that they did that was because they didn't just set out to be a company that was about profits, but put their people first, specifically their employees. See, they are on average paid drastically above the minimum wage and looked towards creating and developing careers in retail when previously it was thought that all you needed to basically do was create low income and increase the profits. Now, Costco is the second largest retail provider in America and is consistently thriving even in today's climate and even in today's financial climate. And the key to it is that basically they look towards inspiring, having a trustful relationship between each other. As basically people progressed, Costco is now seen as one of the high retail end jobs where you can actually pursue a career in it. It's not just one of those jobs where it's actually looked down upon, it's actually seen as a respectful career choice. In fact, a lot of employees are offered positions at Google, to Facebook, to a lot of other larger corporations, but they're actively seen turning it down. And the reason that is because the work environment that Costco looks towards creating isn't just a work environment where you're there for retail, but it's also one of family. And what that allowed to do was that basically the workers there, if you've ever been, they're very accommodating. In fact, it's been rated one of the highest customer service places in Australia alone, and that's just not to talk about the types of employees that they have over in America. The book then starts to talk about the psychological reasons, specifically the chemicals that cause your brain and what basically you actively look towards achieving. Specifically dopamine, serotonin and oxytocin. So it talks about how dopamine basically comes from accomplishments. So whenever you set tasks and basically achieve them, your body gets a boost in dopamine, and this is what you actively chase. Back towards like when we were our ancestors, this basically came from hunting and gathering, whenever we accomplished ourselves for food. Nowadays, it's basically whatever task and fulfillment that we set out to achieve. The other two types of endorphins that are basically present in our brain are serotonin and oxytocin. Serotonin primarily comes from recognition, whether it's achievement from a crowd, and it's also a main reason why a lot of leaders always suggest never giving praise in private, but always in public. And the next one is oxytocin, and how it's essentially the love drug, but can also be attained through physical touch. He then talks about how you can never have too much of one thing. The first one being dopamine. If you receive too much for your accomplishments, eventually you'll basically run into a wall where nothing will ever feel like it's fulfilling you anymore because you're too used to it. And it's the main reason he attributes to why so successful people end up actually having a level of depression. The next one is serotonin and oxytocin, and how recognition, if you become a recognition junkie, that can happen as well, and eventually you'll end up not accomplishing anything. But more specifically, oxytocin, and how too much love, too much physical touch can result in laziness, and you don't actually need towards achieving anything, and it's basically why the majority of people actually don't end up becoming successful. It's because that level of fulfillment no longer has an effect, or is no longer a want or a drive that they're looking to accomplish in life. He then goes to go that leadership is every day. You actually can't turn on leadership. It's a part of your character. It's a part of who you are. Just like how if you have black hair, you're a brunette, leadership is something that you never actually turn off. It is something, however, that you develop. See, a leader will always look towards basically inspiring others versus just focusing on managing individuals' times or tasks. And the difference is that they will always have your back. If you've ever been lucky enough to have a situation, maybe even in a corporate environment, where the manager or the boss or the leader of the basically team that you're running always takes basically he puts it on if you were to ever do something wrong. He puts on I'm trying to remember the word. He accepts the fact that he accepts basically the team and whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Sorry, I can't think of the word exactly, but basically what I'm trying to say is that he takes what's it called? He takes recognition for your wins and your losses of the team. So if you're ever caught doing something wrong, as much as it is your fault, it's more so the leader's, because he should have been able to foresee it. He understands that basically he's in charge of you, which therefore means that he should be in charge of the team. And it goes on to say that a leader will always take blame. That's the word. Will always take blame for everybody else's accomplishments and will never blame anyone. A leader should be someone that you should be able to go to with the problem versus trying to hide it away. It should be a protection from pain. That is a trait of a good leader, where basically no matter what the circumstances, even if you've done something completely wrong, you understand that he's going to have your back. He will reprimand you himself whenever it comes to the higher ups or anything like that. He will basically take the blame, or sorry, not he, he or she, the person in the leadership position will basically take blame for the circumstances that have happened, whatever's been going on, and be able to basically put it towards the higher ups that it's his fault versus someone else's, and reprimand you in private. That is basically a trait of a good leader, someone who basically takes on the fault of his entire team and the individuals, because he understands as a leader, he needs to eat last. He's the individual that's in control of his team, no one else is. All right. The next thing that it talks about is that they can't maintain more than 150 close relationships. So if you're ever owning a business or running a massive team, understand that there will be a limitation to how many people you can lead at any given time. Someone's gone on to basically to quote the number at 150. So if you're ever reaching around that goal, understand that you need to start delegating different leaders within your organization, within your team, in order to maintain effective results. The book then talks about how all you need in order to develop leadership is basically trust, is honesty. You just need to be honest. You need to basically come forth with the truth. If an individual can always come forth with the truth, then trust can always be built. There's a funny quote that goes, I don't know exactly how long it takes to develop trust, but it's in between 7 days and 7 years, and somewhere in between, depending on the type of person. And the key towards developing it fast is honesty. Always being honest, always being basically transparent, either with your leader, but never ever gripe as a leader. A leader's job is to always basically take the things on the chin and never gripe down towards the people who you're leading itself. You need to always try to appear as complete as possible while also being empathetic. There's a lot of other stories that he talks about how basically, I can't remember the exact company, when a massive company was having huge layoffs, he was basically tasked in lowering the the payment budgets to his employees were about $2 million. But rather than firing anywhere between 20 to 50 employees, he said it was unfair that certain people were going to lose their jobs and other people weren't. So what he suggested doing was that people just took extended holidays. He says, I don't know when it's going to happen, but across the year, can you just look towards taking an extra 2 weeks off? And eventually, so many people did it that they ended up lowering the budget, being able to go in the green, ended up being overperforming when it came into the time of when it came into financial struggle, and they ended up becoming a more boostful company. And the reason that happened was because as a group, as a team, it basically united the company, and they understood that they wanted to band together. They didn't want to fire people unnecessarily. He said, if there's anyone that didn't want to be here, go. But if you do feel as if you want to stay here, can we do our best to basically maintain and take care of the people around us? He created a sort of family environment amongst the company, and for that reason, he's one of the greatest CEOs of all time. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking that CEOs, they have to be cutthroat and they have to be non-empathetic, when in truth, they're the most empathetic people at all. Because in order to be an effective leader, you have to understand your problems. That's really what it's talking about whenever you're especially in a CEO position. So many people think that it's about being cutthroat, but when it's really about being the person who can inspire to get the best out of the people around you. The next thing that the book talks about is how becoming a leader is something that everybody should actively do, especially if you're trying to overcome an addiction or a bad habit. He says that the 12 steps to overcoming, for for example, in an Alcoholics Anonymous leading, is by inspiring someone else and leading them to help get over it. In fact, majority of the people who don't look towards actively cure the problem in someone else end up relapsing and going back towards drinking alcohol. It's a part of human nature. It's almost as if it's starting to create an accountability and a level of integrity with those around you, but making sure that you can duplicate the things that you've been struggling with the help of someone else. And it's basically a mutually beneficial thing. So if you're not in a position where you're a leader, or you don't think that you want to be a leader, understand that the key to success is by at some point developing leadership skills. Anyways, guys, that's Quick Notes with Chris with Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. I highly suggest you don't stop there and keep looking at the other videos that we have on the channel, making sure you're inspired, keep moving towards improvement, and putting yourself in a better financial position for success. I'll see you in the next one.